What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about Frank Miller's Holy Terror. This book came out in 2011. It features a character very similar to Batman called the Fixer, who lives in a city very similar to Gotham City called Empire City. And there is a terrorist attack, and then the Fixer and a character who is not Catwoman, they go to war against Al-Qaeda, trying to stop them from doing something like this again. And this book, narratively, is a big, huge mess. It is incredibly xenophobic, and most of the time, I try to separate whatever message a piece of art is giving. I try to separate that from whatever the creator of the art believes. But in this case, with Frank Miller, I've heard him in several interviews say some things that makes me believe that the message this piece of art is delivering is something that he agrees with. And that's very problematic, because the message that this book is sending is that if you are brown and you are from that part of the world that Al-Qaeda is part of, then you are an enemy and you are part of the problem. And that is just extremely gross. That is not a message that should be propagated in any way. This book basically has this not Batman character. As soon as his city is attacked, he just goes out and just starts killing people. Doesn't matter if they're actually part of Al-Qaeda or not. As far as Frank Miller is concerned, seemingly everyone who is from that part of the world is part of Al-Qaeda. It's just really, really problematic. So narratively, and then once you get beyond that, there's just not that much of a story here. Basically, it's Batman and Catwoman going around trying to stop a group of terrorists from blowing up the city. There isn't a whole lot of substance to this book once you get past the very problematic message that this book is delivering. But artistically, I think this book is very interesting. Frank Miller is pretty good at drawing a page, composing a page. There's some panel layouts that I think are incredibly interesting here. So visually, this book is very stunning for the most part. Occasionally, there will be a panel where I have no idea what's going on, and I have to look at it for a lot longer than I would usually look at a panel. Sometimes the words will kind of explain what's going on. A lot of times, I just have no idea what's going on. And part of what makes this book look so interesting is also part of what makes it so difficult to tell what's going on at times, because there's very little color in this book. There is bits and pieces of red, and there's bits and pieces of green, and other than that, it's all black and white. So sometimes Miller will overuse shadows or overuse black ink in a panel, and so it's very difficult to tell what's going on in those cases. And I think if it was a colored panel, on the one hand, other parts of the book would look a lot less interesting, but on the other hand, on those panels where I have no idea what's going on, I might be able to tell what's going on if there was more color in that panel. So visually, this book is a mixed bag, but I would say it mostly looks really nice. It's 80% really awesome, and 20% I can't tell what's going on. I'm really glad that this is not a Batman book. Everyone who has read this has probably heard that originally it started off as a Batman book at DC. It was going to be called Holy Terror Batman, and it was going to have the exact same plot. Batman was going to be fighting Al-Qaeda. And I am really glad that Frank Miller, at some point during the production of this, decided that he was not going to have this be a Batman book, because I do not want to see Batman killing Muslims just because they are Muslim. That would leave even more of a bad taste in my mouth than this book already did. But it's a double-edged sword, because with these characters technically not being Batman, Catwoman, I guess the Question, and Commissioner Gordon, with these characters technically not being those characters, you have a blank slate, and you have to develop these characters so that they are more than just archetypes. If your only intention is to wink wink and say, yeah, this isn't Commissioner Gordon, then you're not really telling a story here. You're just kind of making a big joke that is going to cost the audience $30 a pop. And by the way, I got this discounted. I got this for $10. I cannot imagine paying full price for this. I would have been even more upset with myself for paying $30 for this story if I had paid full price. But anyway, a lot of these characters, they are not developed in any way at all. The Fixer, who is our Batman knockoff, he does not have any personality at all. We find out that he does not want to fall in love, and I guess he thinks that that will compromise his war on crime if he falls in love with somebody. And that's all we know. We don't know anything about his origin. We don't know anything about him as a person. And I don't think that we have to get into his origin story here necessarily, but I would like to know a little bit more about him. Otherwise, this is just a big soapbox entry of Frank Miller yelling about how the Muslims are destroying the world, and I don't really want to just read a soapbox thing. I would like to know a little bit more about these characters. I would like to know a little bit more about this world. As is, it feels like he was 90% done with this Batman story, and then either he decided that it shouldn't be a Batman story, or one of his bosses said, no, you can't have Batman doing that. So then he just went back and erased all of Batman's ears and then called him the Fixer. It really doesn't feel very developed beyond a very, very basic Batman and Catwoman do this thing and they try and stop Al-Qaeda. It really does not feel very developed as its own property. It still feels very much like a Batman knockoff, which is a problem since it's supposed to be its own thing now. It's not supposed to still be a Batman story because it's not a Batman story anymore. This is now a Fixer story. So anyway, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I liked this book. I think some of the pictures here are really beautiful. I think that occasionally Frank Miller is still capable of wowing and dazzling people with his art, but the story here, what little there is just garbage. The message that it is trying to get out there is also garbage. I would not recommend buying this book. If you want to just Google pictures of Holy Terror by Frank Miller and look at some of the artwork, that's good enough. I don't think that you really need to buy this book because there's not enough here to make it worth your while, in my opinion. So anyway, those were my thoughts on Holy Terror. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later this week with some more videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.